Pixar is known for creating heartwarming stories. Some bring back memories of childhood, most teach us timeless lessons about life. Soul shows the joy in life itself, where we're introduced to the world that exists before birth. But who in this story is the most good and who falls short? We've done good to most good lists in the past, but they always focus on heroes or good characters. This is actually a unique situation because this is a movie in which all the characters fall somewhere in the good area.
This won't be a disaster.
For this reason, we're gonna start with the least good and work our way up to the most good. Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Bench, and this is Soul, good to most good. Taking our spot for least good, we have Terry. Unlike the Jerrys, Terry is set in his ways. He takes his job seriously. He will do anything and everything to keep things flowing smoothly. We aren't sure what the purpose of counting all the souls coming into the great beyond is, but he certainly wasn't going to let anything throw off his count.
I'll move among the shadows, like a ninja.
We have to drop him low on our list for how his drive to catch Joe traumatized another human by mistake. And we're annoyed at the fact that though he found 22 in Joe's body, Terry never checked on 22's condition, not caring about her well-being since. We get that he isn't a counselor like the Jerrys, but still, that's neglectful. Next, we have the neighborhood cynic, Paul. Paul makes it clear when he overhears Joe talking about playing a gig that has no hope in him becoming a musician. When 22 makes a comment that he must be covering for his own failures, Paul becomes defensive.
Cut deep, Joe.
While we don't learn what made Paul so jaded, he isn't a bad guy. When 22 tries warming up to him by offering him one of the free suckers, Paul accepts it. He wasn't a complete jerk and didn't deserve having his soul ripped out by Terry, who had mistaken him as Joe. Next, we have the adored sax player, Doretha Williams, a woman Joe had long admired for her skills in jazz music. She's initially cold and unapproachable.
We're down to middle school band teachers now.
But Doretha was a sensible and no-nonsense woman that had a career to protect. And seeing Joe covered in pizza grease, wearing only a hospital gown, would have made anyone nervous to work with him. But Doretha respected his passion and gave him a chance. And when it was all through, she gave him some much-needed advice. Though we don't see her much in the film, she's a smart woman that speaks from experience. She knows how to read people and helps them how she can. Next, we have Joe Gardner. We can sympathize with this situation, but Joe was inflexible even before his death. He refused to talk about anything but jazz and treated it as his whole world, while everything else was an inconvenience. Joe was so occupied with getting his dream gig, he never stopped to take his mother's concern into consideration, think about the students he would be leaving behind, or think of others in general. It isn't until 22 spends time in his body that he realizes how much he takes for granted. We give Joe credit for coming through in the end. After he realizes how wrongly he treated 22, he goes back to find her to help her get to the life waiting for her on Earth.
You are ready to live, 22?
Even if Joe hadn't been rewarded a second chance, it would have been a happy ending for him. He got the gig he wanted and learned to appreciate the little things that made everyday life so valuable. Joe was making up for doing a lot of damage. He was unhappy with his work, and it showed with how he treated the classes, unable to express joy openly until Connie started playing on her own. He brushes off Paul's animosity as him being a bitter person instead of trying to befriend him. He never bothered to talk to anyone else about their dreams or passions, as we learn when Dez admits he was happy to not talk about jazz for once. Joe was even willing to blow off Connie if it meant it could get 22 cleaned up before the show, making it clear that Connie threatening to quit was a frequent conversation the two of them had. And when 22 had almost been lost, Joe learned that on top of all the mentors 22 had over the years, Joe's voice had been the loudest, claiming that she had only gotten her spark because she was experiencing everything in his body. It was a relief to see Joe not only come to terms with everything he experienced, but was able to get through to 22 and help her make that jump to go to Earth. When the movie's in its final moments, Joe makes the promise that he was going to make every second of the rest of his life count, and we can't help but wonder how he was going to use these lessons.
I'm gonna live every minute of it.
Next, we want to mention the Subway musician. Voiced by Cody Chestnut, he didn't have any conversations with Joe or 22, but he made an impact on them in his own way. He wasn't making a ton of money singing for strangers, but it was something he loved doing. He said nothing when 22 dropped a partly eaten bagel and thinking she was helping because in the end, it wasn't about becoming famous right there in the subway. His role was a nice contrast to Joe. Where Joe wanted to finally make it as a musician, this man seemed content in just sharing his voice and bringing a little bit of light to people in his own way. Joe says himself that the subway is horrible because it was hot, overcrowded, and full of people with short tempers. But this young man singing was a small relief to a ton of drudgery. Next on our list, we have Connie, another student of Joe's. She shows a lot of talent on the trombone, but is easily frustrated and often threatens to quit. She was able to relate to 22 due to also being a cynic. Connie makes a statement that she's believed the education system is flawed since she was in the 3rd grade. Connie wasn't a bad kid. She was a young girl trying to find value in her life and trying to forge her own path. In the end, she kept playing because that's what she loved to do.
You really love this.
Yeah.
She respected Joe as her teacher, often venting to him when it came time for their lessons, and her clashing emotions over playing and giving up were what got 22 to consider that life on Earth may have more value than she originally thought. Next, we have Joe's former student, Lamont Curly Baker. We don't see much of him in the film, but he's still a key player. Curly recommended Joe for the gig when they needed a replacement and had vouched for Joe when Doretha doubted the teacher's abilities. He said that Joe made Curly want to go to school, crediting the teacher with helping Curly find his passion in life. He was an example of Joe's true purpose, teaching. Next, we want to mention the cat therapy lady. Though not a huge role in the film, she was a sweet woman that wanted to help. When Joe's trying to find his body, we hear her speaking to the doctor asking if they found his family. She'd been concerned about Joe's condition and was overjoyed when he woke up, thinking her cat had helped.
The therapy cat is working.
When we see her again, she's carrying her crate around the city, looking for her lost pet. It's easy to see how much she cared for her cat, since it had been hours since Joe had left the hospital in its body. Next is Geralt. When she meets Joe, she explains that they were approaching the great beyond and expressed sympathy that he must have met an unexpected end. She stated that being 106, she had been looking forward to this for a long time.
Been waiting a long time for this.
Geralt didn't know Joe, but had made this small effort to ease his worry so he could approach the end without fear. Though she wasn't able to keep him from panicking, we wanted to include her for even attempting to soothe a fellow soul. Next, we have Libba's friends Lulu and Melba. They took up the roles of aunts or second mothers to Joe. They shared Libba's concern with Joe's obsession to play gig after gig instead of leaping at the idea of a full-time position at the school. They jumped in to help Libba mend her husband's old suit and supported him as he played his dream gig alongside Doretha Williams. They care for him as though he was their own child, seemed playfully teasing him about his ripped underwear and listening in when they thought Libba was going to tear into him. Next, we have Joe's mother, Libba. She makes it clear that she was more concerned that Joe could afford to live than if he played jazz professionally. When she hears about her son playing another gig, she shows annoyance at him for lying to her.
It's like you can't even be truthful with me anymore.
She states that she kept the family above water when Joe's father had strived to be a musician and didn't want to see her son struggle trying to make the same mistakes. It wasn't as though he didn't believe in his abilities, but she wanted him to find a way to play music and pay the bills. As far as she was concerned, a full-time job being a music teacher was a perfect fit. Even through all the disagreements, Libba makes a point to tell Joe that she was proud of all that he accomplished. She had been there when Joe played with Doretha, making sure to cheer loudly when the set ended, so he knew she was there to support him.
I'm so proud of you, Joey.
Next, we have the most stubborn soul, 22. We learn that she's reluctant to live due to finding life on Earth pointless. She's already had numerous mentors over the thousands of years she'd been trying to find her spark, being labeled a lost cause and an annoyance.
I'm gonna make you wish you never died.
She's cynical and enjoys annoying people, but shows a different side of herself when she begins to experience what living is like. While in Joe's body, she shows to be insightful and friendly, taking joy in everything. She got Des to talk about his own life rather than listen to someone else for a change. She was kind towards Paul when he was being distant. She was able to encourage Connie to keep with her love for playing music, even though 22 had been quick in the beginning to agree that music was a waste of time. She was able to get Libba and Joe to open up to one another, getting them to hear each other out. 22 was difficult at times, but it clearly came from a place of uncertainty and fear. When Joe tries to reach her as a lost soul, we see all the insults and rejections that 22 had built up inside of herself.
You won't make it. Selfish. No one would ever want to be around you.
She'd been told time and time again for thousands of years that she was no good and wasn't worth the effort, which made her lash out whenever a new mentor came along. But not only did she learn about how precious life was, but she showed Joe that he'd been focused on the wrong parts of life. Thankfully, she got her happy ending. Our Bronze Medal of Good goes to the barber, Dez. Dez is a light-hearted man that likes to take care of people. When he sees the state Joe is in, he insists on helping him out. Though Dez doesn't care for jazz music anywhere near as much as Joe did, he was willing to chat with him about it. Dez reveals that he had no intention of being a barber, having to at one point be a veterinarian. Even with the change in plans, Dez expressed he was happy and still able to save lives in his own way.
I'm happy as a clam, my man.
Next on our list, with the Silver Medal of Good, we have the Soul Counselors, the Jerrys. Friendly, welcoming, and patient, their job is to help the souls gain personalities and inspiration. Though the Jerrys had slipped up on Joe's identity, mistaking him for a mentor, they were good at aiding the souls in their care. Though 22 had been labeled a difficult case, they refused to give up on her finding her spark, even if it meant wrangling her on stage in front of everyone. When 22 finally showed an interest in life on Earth, even if it was a lie, they didn't show any suspicion. Instead, they were happy to see 22 finally take an interest in living life. When Joe helped to save 22 from being stuck in a lost soul, the Jerrys twisted things around to reward Joe with a second chance on Earth as a thank you. And of course, we can't forget how they put together a small award ceremony at Terry's insistence just to make him feel appreciated.
And I'll just take that back.
The gold medal for most good goes to Moonwind, a man all about spreading good vibes. He helped Joe get back to the land of the living and was willing to help out 22 when she was in Joe's body. Moonwind took time while working to go between realms and aid in helping lost souls, helping people be released from their obsessions and anxieties so they could continue living.
Concentrate on where your body is.
When he wasn't able to get Joe back in his body, Moonwind sought out 22 to check on her well-being and saw that she was becoming a lost soul after her time on Earth. Alright guys, what do you think? Who are the most good and evil characters in Soul? Let us know in the comment section. Don't forget to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.